yesterday once more.
Now, I've heard of BSR mechanisms running fast, but this is ridiculous. And as you can tell, we're set to 33, so why is this thing running so fast? Let's pull the platter off and find out. I've already removed the clip and the 45 RPM adapter. Actually, you have to remove the adapter first. There's the clip. If anybody can tell me what kind of clip that is, it's not a standard E clip or C clip. I actually need a couple of these for other record players that I have with missing platter retainer clips. Turn the right knob, it might go off. Now the 16 RPM portion of the shaft is bent. I've seen that happen on a lot of record players. I don't know how it happens, but okay. Alright, 45 sounds more in line with what it should be. 78 sounds right, and this record player actually has a fairly decent sound to it. And I have no idea who made this. There's no manufacturer marking on it anywhere. This could be considered one of those cheapy classroom record players. You might remember a year or so ago we had one of those that used a 3-volt crystal cartridge and this same BSR mechanism that we had to build an FET preamp stage for to make it work with a modern cartridge. Fortunately, the cartridge in this one appears to still be good, but, you know, I guess that could change at any time. Cosmetically, this is in pretty good shape. The handle's busted off and needs to be replaced, but other than that, all it needs is a good cleaning. BSR used this mechanism for years, probably from the late 60s up until the early 80s. Up until about 73, it was a 4-speed mechanism. From 73, about 73 on up, they were 3-speed with no 16 RPM setting. And there was also a DC motor-driven version of this, and I have one, Columbia Masterwork portable that's battery-operated that uses the 4-speed DC version of this mechanism. And there was even a talking book machine for the blind that used the 4-speed version that was modified to play 8, 16, 33, and 45. Those were battery-operated models. They weren't in wide-scale circulation, but they were available to Americans who were, for whatever reason, living overseas, and to Americans that are library patrons that did not have access to electricity. I think they would run on either 120 or 240 volt or an internal rechargeable battery, but enough about that. If I ever find one of those machines, I'll do a video on it. But we know the 78 and 45 setting is working normally, but the 33 setting is whacked out. And I can feel the 16 RPM top rung of the shaft is bent, like I already mentioned. And even the 33 portion feels bent. You can hear the noise it's making, like the shaft is indeed bent. But I don't think we have anything to worry about. See, 45 and 78 are... Come on, move over there. Well, I guess this thing needs to be lubricated, no doubt. But yes, 78 sounds pretty good, so I think we're going to have to dig through our junk and find a motor on a junk record changer. Here's the inside. It's a dual speaker job, 2 4-inch speakers, one on each side, and here's the motor and amplifier. Now, as you can see, this motor is the type that has a secondary winding on it to provide power to the amplifier circuit board. I don't think my replacement motor is going to have that, so that leaves us with a couple of choices that we have. Either add a separate power transformer to provide power to the amplifier, or take the rotor out of the donor motor and put it over in this motor if it'll interchange. I'll probably try that option first. And the more I look at this, I'm thinking this might very well be one of those El Cheapo unbranded classroom phonographs. Yes, it's cheaply made, but it's physically bigger in size and built a little bit better than your average kiddie phonograph from this time period. And most kiddie phonographs didn't have dual 4-inch speakers in them. By the time this was made, about a 3-inch speaker was what you were seeing in your average kiddie phonograph. It's just a little 3-transistor amplifier, not much to it at all, and I found a 1970 date code on one of the pots after careful examination. So this was probably made in either late 70 or early 71, but I can't find any indication as to who made this. All I know is the drive mechanism is BSR. As far as who made it, I haven't got a clue, but it does look very similar, at least the amplifier does, to that other unbranded classroom record player that we had. So, yeah, who knows? I went ahead and took a voltage measurement off of the winding on the motor, and I'm getting 12 volts AC going into the amplifier. That will be helpful should I end up having to add an external power transformer to this. And just a little helpful hint, when you're working on any of these little solid-state record players like this, it's always best to make sure the speakers are connected, because in some cases, if the amplifier doesn't see the proper load across it, you can blow the output transistors. Now granted, what's in this is nothing expensive or exotic, but still, I don't want to blow them out carelessly. Here's an old junk BSR changer. Yes, I saved these for obvious reasons, that I think has a motor on it that we can use. Here's our motor. It needs to be taken apart and cleaned and lubricated, but let's go see if we can make it work in our application. Back in the day, these motors came in at least 3 varieties, electrically anyway. The standard 120-volt version, the 90-volt version for use in one-tube wonder models where the motor was wired in series with the tube heater, and the standard 120-volt version with a secondary winding to provide low voltage for a solid-state amplifier. And you can see on this mechanism, here are the 3 mounting holes where the DC motor would go in that particular version of mechanism. Obviously, physically, it's much bigger than the average DC motor in your Crosley Cruiser, and they actually last longer, too. Okay, here are the 2 motors, and I'm seeing an issue that might be a problem. The diameter of our donor motor shaft is, the steps on it are bigger than what's on this one, but looking at this one closely, it looks like a bunch of hair and crap wrapped around it, so let me try to get all that crap off, and maybe once I do that, I might not have to replace this motor. Well, it doesn't want to focus for some reason. What else is new? But anyway, I done a good bit of scraping and sanding and got all the debris off of this shaft, but the 16 RPM portion is still bent. That probably happened from the hair and crap that got on there, and then it got snagged on something. I'm going to try to straighten this. Usually when that happens, it ends up breaking off. But that's on the Alliance and General Industries motors that I've had that happen to. Hopefully I'll be more fortunate with this one. If not, then we just won't have 16 RPM. It's not perfectly straight, but it's about as straight as I can get it, and I'm afraid to keep trying because if I'm not careful, that's liable to snap off. It should still play at 16. There may be a little wow and flutter, but it is what it is. Fortunately, That's not a commonly used speed. There were a few music LPs on 16, but most 16 RPM records were spoken word recordings for the visually impaired, so that's something that most people don't have a need for anyway. Here's the motor. I oiled it. I didn't take it completely apart because it's running so smoothly as it was. I just oiled the top and bottom with my zoom spout, and it's running very quiet and smooth now, so it should be okay. This is not a record player that I want to devote a ton of time to, so it is what it is. Alright, I have the spindle bearing lubricated with white lithium grease, the idler wheel treated with rubber renew. These BSR wheels usually only need a good cleaning. I've seen very few that I had to replace. And you also want to check your idler adjustment, which is this screw right here, this brass colored screw, and make sure the idler wheel is positioned on the correct portion of the motor capstan, which this one is. Now we'll put the plighter back on and see if Karen Carpenter is singing at the right pitch now. We were talking about 16 RPM speed. You can see where the rubber has been running against this plighter. And it looks like 33, 45, and 78 have been heavily used, but 16, very little, if at all. Let me try to clean this up with some Windex before I put it back on. Alright, the proof is in the pudding. Yeah, that sounds a lot better. She may be a little high pitched, but that's normal for these kind of BSR motors. And like I said before, this clip is not your ordinary E-clip. It has to go on the spindle a certain way because a portion of this clip protrudes through a small slot that's in the side of the spindle and comes into contact with a notch that's in the spindle shaft, thus preventing the plighter from being lifted off. And if you don't have this clip on right, then it won't do any good at all. And like I think I've already said, I have a couple of these record players with this type of mechanism that the clip's missing, and I need to find a source because I don't think a standard E-clip will work. So I need to find a source for these kind of clips. What do you know, I got it on right the first time, and you see how this works. I felt where the notch was, and then the wide part of the clip goes through that little notch enough to keep this from lifting off. So the clip's doing its job. Now we have to carefully reinstall the 45 adapter without breaking the legs off, and with old brittle plastic that's easy to do. Don't ask how I know. Well, that needle's bent, still playing a record. Let's see if I got one of these needles somewhere.
Let your hair down, baby. We ain't going to heaven no how. I'm ready to fun, baby. That here is now.
Alright, that sounds better and it's louder. New needle will do that.
A novel of suspense by William P. McGibbon. Copyright 1966 by William P. McGibbon. Recorded for the Library of Congress and the Talking Book Studios of American Foundation for the Blind, Incorporated, with the kind permission of the publishers, Dodd Mead and Company. Solely for the use of the blind. Read by Guy Sorrell. Listeners are requested to keep these talking book discs clean and in order. The caper of...
Okay, I dug through my junk and I found a broken handle on another record player and I repaired it. As you can see, I just put a bolt through here to hold it together, and now we can carry the thing. Now, I don't know how long it'll be before it cracks on this side. These old handles are bad about breaking when they get 50 years old. But I'm not going to worry about that. Like I said, I'm not interested in investing a bunch of time and money in this record player, and if I can patch it up with junk around here, then that's what we'll do. And if somebody else winds up with this and wants to replace the handle, then they can replace the handle on their own time. But I'm not going to worry about it. And I just measured the tracking pressure of this, 10 grams, so it's not really suited for your prized records. It is what it is. How many times have I said that in this video already? It's just a kiddie record player. It was designed to be nothing more, nothing less. And I certainly would not play styrene 45s on it. Now, your old beat-up vinyl, it'll be okay for that. But I would not play styrene 45s on this, and I would not play anything that I wanted to preserve for the long haul.
Smile, your father